It wasn't all that long ago that your typical insurance commercial was about as funny as your average root canal. Advertisements for State Farm or Allstate in the 1990s almost always featured a calm and serene picture of a modern American family. After all, insurance was, and still is, big business, and customers needed to feel like their insurance companies were serious in order to consider them trustworthy. But then, in 1999, a small gecko with a British accent burst into the scene and changed everything. Fast forward 20 years, and the landscape has changed considerably. From geckos and cavemen to Flo, Jamie, to the Lemur Emu, not to mention Jake from State Farm. Insurance commercials are now some of the funniest ads on TV, with each company trying to one-up the other like dueling late-night talk show hosts. The changing landscape of insurance ads is just one example of a rhetorical tool that is becoming more commonly known and used in our modern society. The persuasive power of humor, long used to entertain, humor is now being used to sell, to convince, and to influence in arenas from sales to social media and even into politics. So today, we will get in on the joke and attempt to better understand the persuasive nature of humor by first analyzing how humor has been used as a rhetorical tool in the past, then exploring what makes it so hilariously effective, before finally gazing into the future to find both the applications and implications of leaving them rolling in the aisles. And don't worry, you're in good hands. So in order to understand how humor has become such an effective tool of persuasion, we first must look back at the long history of humor in human communication, dating back to the time of the caveman when Thag and Krug took turns writing, "Your mom is a mastodon," on each other's cave walls. Humor has always been a part of the way humans communicate. Fast forward a few thousand years, and some of our most prominent civilizations used humor extensively. The Romans, Egyptians, and Greeks all used humor as a means to tell stories, to educate, and even to criticize their politicians. In more modern times, British and American newspaper editors used political cartoons as a means to poke fun at their leaders and to increase circulation, but also to win over the readers to their way of thinking. It didn't take long for the American sense of humor to become a prominent way of thinking, and therefore a key way that people attempted to persuade others to their point of view. Perhaps no one better understood this fact than the early wave of stand-up comedians like Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, Louis Black, and Bert Kreischer, who all used their platforms as a means to push for social change by pointing out what they viewed as the idiocy of the opposing viewpoint. And this concept of mixing humor and rhetoric went to a new level in 1975 when Saturday Night Live made its debut. And the movement continues today, where late night shows and nightly news programs have been merged by hosts such as Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, and Trevor Noah. In a 2017 study by the American Psychological Association, 95% of respondents felt the desire to stay informed, but 56% said that doing so causes them stress. Thus, comedy news allows us to feel like we are staying informed while still remaining entertained and less depressed in the process. So it's clear that humor has long been a part of our culture, and for fairly obvious reasons, we like to laugh. But the reasons why humor is such an effective tool of persuasion require a deeper look. For starters, much like using sex appeal in advertising, humor provides a distraction to the more cynical parts of our brain. According to John Mayer, the Southern Mississippi professor, not the washed-up pop singer, humorous appeals create a chemical arousal state that helps to release tensions and enhance social attraction. Essentially, humor tells our brain to just relax and enjoy the show, not to think too hard about what we're seeing, like a K-pop band. And once we're in the relaxed state, like a hypnosis, strange things begin to happen. The barriers our mind puts up between fun and logic start to crumble. According to a study by Lambert's Library at St. Hennessy, when our opinions of source credibility are low, humor helps disassociate the source from the message, and source credibility almost immediately begins to increase. And finally, a recent study by Charles Greener goes into this even further, saying that humor not only lets us put aside our reservations about source credibility, but it actually becomes a rhetorical attribute. When Sacha Baron Cohen, also known as his alter ego Borat, speaks in public as himself, his message is surprisingly impactful. In November of 2019, he addressed the Anti-Defamation League and said that Facebook was the greatest propaganda machine in history and that it would have run ads by Hitler if given a chance. Because of Cohen's comedic fame, his credibility as a speaker on non-comedic issues was actually enhanced. So now that we have seen just how widely humor has been used throughout human history and why it's so effective as a means of persuasion, we must now ask ourselves what the future may hold in deploying this potent weapon of rhetoric. For starters, humor only stands to become more effective in this regard as our collective attention spans shrink down to almost nothing. Researcher Mitch Earleywine illustrates a concept called evaluative conditioning, where he explains with people constantly distracted by technology, advertisers have turned to humor with more frequency. A study by the journal Marketing goes into this even further, saying that humorous advertising is more likely to secure audience attention, overcome sales resistance, and enhance message persuasiveness. And speaking of shrinking attention spans, the explosion in social media exists as both a cause and an effect of our love of comedy. From caption memes to catchy gifs to annoying TikTok videos, humor in social media brightens our days when we desperately crave distraction. From AOC to Greta Thunberg, the subtle art of the Twitter burn has become the op-ed of our time, and those who have mastered the art of humor slander often find themselves thrust into the national spotlight, and the viewpoints are often more widely embraced. And finally, our increased emphasis on humor can play a pivotal role in enhancing and maintaining cultural relevance. With the rapid-fire turnaround time of modern news cycles and social media outreach, our ability to make people laugh can oftentimes become a key weapon in advancing our viewpoints and winning the publicity war. Baiting celebrities like Macaulay Culkin and mid-roll businesses like Wendy's all find themselves clinging to cultural relevance through the use of humorous social media accounts that help these entities to hold onto the spotlight for just a little bit longer. So, today, we have taken a closer look at the powerful use of humor as a means of persuasion. We've analyzed the historical impacts of humor, seen why it's effective as a means of persuasion, and looked beyond the punchline to find the future applications of humor. Humor, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. What one person finds hilarious can be tragically unfunny to someone else. But one thing's for sure, when it comes to making people laugh, there's much more at play than meets the eye.